Hey y'all, it's me, Z Infante, and I'm the Director of Youth Outreach for the Future Perfect Project. We believe that the self expression of LGBTQ plus youth and allies is a declaration of a better future for us all. And you're joining us for our weekly programming on Mondays at 7 p.m., where we interview a queer icon, a queer legend, a queer amazing human being who's about to join us. Hello, Alysse. Let me see if I can get you in here. There you are. Hello.
Hi.
Yes. Hello. It's
Hi.
so nice to
I feel
finally
like,
meet
yeah,
you.
I am enjoying my summer barbecue glow right now. So here
Yes, me too. Me too. My visiting with my sister. Well, my sister's visiting with my niece, who's 2.5 years old. So, and we've been outside in the back the whole day. It's been
exactly where
so
I've been. Yep,
beautiful.
with my nephews in the kiddie pool. So
Oh my God. I love.
yes.
And you recently just got married too. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So
Well,
big
September
family.
2019. So it's been a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, but a little family gathering. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my name is Z. I am, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm the director of youth outreach for the Future Perfect Project.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna have you introduce yourself in a minute, but I
Sure.
just like to let you know a little bit about FPP and where we are and where we began. Stuff that I've
Mm-hmm.
talked to you about, but for those who are watching us for the first time, just to get them to know a little bit about us, and then have you introduce yourself, and then we'll get the ball rolling. So FPP started about 3 years ago when our co-founder Celeste Lacine, the co-founder of the Trevor Project, and Ryan Amador were on the road, and they were working with queer youth across the country, bringing arts programming, and they found a need for queer youth to express themselves creatively. And hence the Future Perfect Project was born, and we go across the country to different LGBTQ centers, different high schools, middle schools, and bring programming to them there. Ever since the pandemic hit, we've moved all of our programming online, and for the entirety of our existence have been free. So all the programs that we offer are free for queer youth. From ages 13 through 19, and we do a series of workshops. We have animations, all this awesome stuff that I'm sure I'll bring up to you at some point during our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a little bit about us. Myself, I'm a autobiographical artist, actor, producer, director, and what I do creatively with the Future Perfect Project is as a facilitator. And I really love the people that we work with and the people I work with and the work that we do. And I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to have a conversation with you, Alysse, who is such an amazing influencer and icon, and someone that is really standing out in the queer community today for the work, advocacy work that you're doing, and just the body positivity movement that you are so a part of. And so I'll start again just by saying my name, my pronouns in a sentence to describe how I'm feeling and where I am, and then you can go, and then we'll get the ball rolling on the
Totally.
question. So my name is Z. My pronouns are they, them. My name is Z. They are feeling sun-kissed in Roselle Park, New Jersey.
Love it. Hi, my name is Alysse. I use she, her pronouns, and she is feeling uh, lots of joy and like surrounded by love in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, yes, yes, a Midwesterner,
Yes,
right? I
I
love
am a
that.
Midwesterner, which always throws people because they just assume that I must live on a coast. But, one of the things that appeals to me about living here is that there is a lot of work to be done, especially in the LGBTQ community, especially in regards to youth. We just had a really damaging bill pass here that doctors could deny trans youth healthcare. And that just passed here in Ohio, unfortunately. So these things are important. And I think sometimes it's easy for folks on the coast and more progressive places to forget that some of us here in the Midwest and other parts of the country, we have these things come up every day that we have to be aware of. So yeah, so I'm in the middle of the country, and it's not great all the time, but that's why the work keeps going, right? I guess.
And we've got you out there. We've got you out there representing, which is an amazing opportunity for us to have someone like you who is, from my understanding, the work that I've done to get to know you, um, you have this effervescence in your interviews, in the way in which you you post and share so much love and joy and so many facets of your life with the world, which I feel like is so important to our community. So I'm wondering how you identify in the queer spectrum.
So I identify as queer as because I just like the fluidity of that term in terms of my sexual orientation and also my gender identity. I feel like it fits both of those for me because I just anything that's static doesn't fit for me. So for me, queer feels good because of the fluidity, but I'm also comfortable identifying as bi, as in I am attracted to my own gender and genders other than my own, acknowledging that there are more than two genders. So I'm comfortable with those two terms. And I also recognize that I have used other terms and other terms might feel comfortable in the future as well. So again, with the fluidity of it, things could change. So yeah, those are the terms that feel good to me right now.
Now, do you feel like, because you do a lot of work, correct me if I'm wrong, but you do a lot of work at like acknowledging places and people, and you meet so many different people. I'm wondering, do labels, is that something that's useful to you in terms of your identity? Or how do you feel about labels in terms of queerness and a queer identity?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think for me, the labels are important because I first knew that I was queer at like 21 and I didn't publicly come out on my platform till 29. So for me, and something I've heard a lot from my audience too, is that like there's this struggle to feel queer enough to belong in the community. And so for me, my visibility is really important as someone who identifies both as queer and as bi, because we just don't get a lot of visibility. I think we're so often like, if you're not a gold star lesbian, you're not part of this community. Your experience is invalid. And I experienced like a lot of gatekeeping when I was coming out, just like personally dating. I experienced a lot of gatekeeping. And so now with my platform, like I really work to encourage others, like obviously like, you know, coming out as a matter of safety. So if you're not safe to do so or you're not comfortable, no pressure. But like if you are queer, you are bi, and perhaps you're in a relationship with a cis man, and you're a cis woman, like that's okay. You're still part of this community. So for me, like it's been really important to just kind of own the journey and own that coming out looks different for everybody. What queer means looks different to everybody. And like, you don't have like who you are currently dating or who you love doesn't determine who you are, because attraction is such a spectrum and no one expects that you've only ever been attracted to that or dated or been with that one person that you happen to be with right now. That's not realistic. And that's kind of how the gatekeeping really works, is it operates as in like that current partner that you have has to be representative of your identity. And that's just not real. It's not realistic. It's not true. And it can cause a lot of it causes a lot of erasure for bi folks. And so for me, that's been part of my platform, is to kind of be like, yeah, I'm here, I'm queer, and I'm loud about it. You know, I could be seen as someone I am seen as someone in a straight passing relationship. So for me, it's really important to just take up space, obviously, recognize my privilege that I have being in a straight passing relationship, but also at the same time, I am part of this community.
Yes, very much so. I think it's so, you know, what's so powerful of my experience with the Future Perfect Project and the different workshops that we have. We have different writers workshops. And a lot of the time, young people will come and have conversations about their identities, about their labels. And I just come in to recognize that, like, I identify on the spectrum as a pansexual person. Mm-hmm. And that's like, and what I didn't realize before having that identity was that, sort of similar to what you're saying, it felt like an exclusive club that like I wasn't invited into. But
right.
What's beautiful about the representation that you're talking about, the representation that you display, is the inclusivity. You know, is the all-encompassing nature of it, and that's so wonderful and beautiful about you. Represent Cleveland, yes.
Yes.
Now that since you're in Cleveland, we'll have to come to Cleveland and do some sort of
workshop. Absolutely. We would love a workshop here. It's just so necessary. There's there's so many, so many folks who could benefit from it for sure. And people don't think about the smaller cities and the smaller states. So it's always nice when we are thought of and included in things. It's great.
Yeah, well, that's why we're so glad you're here. I'm so glad that you're with us tonight, because I just love the way you represent yourself, your body, your the way you look at the world through your content. And I also know that you're a designer, right? Like
I
you're
started out as a designer.
A fashion designer and a model. And so I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that and how your queerness has affected or been a part of that journey.
Sure. So I started out on like as a designer. I started designing for my brand, still Ready to Stare, but at the time Ready to Stare was not at all a platform about me. It was my handmade jewelry and accessory line, and I am still a metalsmith. I am out of practice for sure, but I'm a metalsmith. So I was making things by hand and selling them first on Etsy and then eventually on my own.com. And this whole concept of being ready to stare was actually inspired by my own experience, in which I was fat shamed on the street, and someone yelled at me out their window like, "Hey, fat girl, stop trying to look skinny." And it was in that moment that I realized that, oh, you associate confidence with being thin, and you assume someone who's not thin can't possibly be confident. And that's where this name Ready to Stare came from. It came from this idea that, like, when you are confident in who you are, like, people will stare, and you have that, and you exist outside of the beauty norm or style. Like, if you exist outside the norm at all, honestly, people are going to stare at you, right? So you have the opportunity to use that stare and kind of turn it back on them and hopefully make them think differently about who can be included in the conversation. So Ready to Stare was always founded on that principle, but I wasn't comfortable being in front of the camera in any way at the beginning. So I made my products, shot them on beautiful models that represented disrupting this beauty standard. And I kind of went about it. And I had a friend who told me, she was like, you are your customer, you're your best asset, and you're not including yourself in the conversation at all. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, no one wants to see me. And she's like, they do. Like, they're following your brand because they like you. I was like, that's not true. And she's like, well, just try to post one selfie a day and just see, or 1 week, she said. And even that felt scary. And she was like, just post one selfie a week and see how it goes. And what do you know? Like, that year, I really started to post myself. I would post, selfies just in front of the mirror. I went from 1,000 followers to 10,000 by the end of the year. So it made a huge difference. And it turned out I had something to say. And I kind of went on this whole self-love journey in front of everyone, because I wasn't comfortable being in front of the camera. I didn't think I deserved to take up any space. But she challenged me. And so I always say your selfies are not selfish, and there is a lot of power in kind of owning your visibility. And that can be as simple. People are like, how are you so confident? And I'm like, it took a long time. And also, like, it can start with a selfie. Like, you do not need to go out there and be on a runway to have someone validate your beauty. You have to take a picture of yourself or look in the mirror and validate your own beauty. And that's really where it starts. And that's where it started for me. So long story short, I started as a designer, got a challenge from a friend to post myself more often on my platform, started modeling for my platform. And then eventually I was kind of doing so much blogging and modeling that I had to kind of pick between the two because it was just too much work to design and also blog. So I picked blogging because I felt like I could have a voice without as much personal investment. It was very expensive. I was 22 when I started my first business. So I was working a day job basically to reinvest in my business, and it was expensive. And I got to a point, I never had any investors. And so I got to a point where I was like, this is a lot of money. I could work with brands and I could help them to understand what body positivity is. And then eventually, like, I came out on my platform, and now I already had a platform. I already had over 100K when I came out. So for me, I was like, okay, y'all are, maybe you're here for the body positivity, maybe you're here for the fashion, but now you're going to be here for my coming out journey and my queer identity journey and all of that. And like, I feel really lucky that I had already, I mean, I shouldn't say lucky because I worked for it, but I had already kind of developed a platform of kind, accepting people. And I didn't notice anything but support when I came out on my platform. So it was good.
Yeah, you just reminded me of like the first few moments where I put on femme clothes for the first time, where I started recognizing myself as a non-binary person. Was like, wait, I don't have to fit into this fashion norm. A weird word. Of what it, you know, what fits on my body or what should be on my body. And it came with like what you were describing, some like initial discomfort, but through the help of friends, through the help of like listening and being encouraged by other people saying like, you are beautiful the way that you are. I love that you said that you are your best asset. You are your customer. It's so real. Like, I am, the people that I reach are often people who look like me, and I'm always talking about representation and visibility, and it's so important to be that in the world. So I love that about you. That's so powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm so curious now more about what it was like for you growing up in terms of when you came to understand your queerness, and what that journey has been like, was like, you know, since we work a lot with queer youth in their teen years, you know, what was it like coming out or figuring it out for you?
Well, I unfortunately am probably not the best example for queer youth because I didn't come out, like I said, until I was 29. So I am more for those, if you are not sure and you are kind of, you know, almost 18, I'm probably like, yeah. So I know some people, even people who come out later in life, are like, oh, I always knew. I didn't always know. And it wasn't like I wasn't around other queer folks. I did a really awesome, you can go back on my page, commercial with State Farm about one of my childhood friends who came out and how some of his mom's friends like turned against him, but my mom didn't. And so I always knew like my mom was going to be accepting, but I never made the connection that like she would need to accept me. So it's not that I wasn't exposed to it. I just really didn't know. And I think the reason I didn't know is because as a kid, I thought you had to be either gay or straight, and like bi I thought was like 50-50. And I just knew I'm 50-50 also doesn't feel good to me. That doesn't feel right because I know my attraction leans one way more than the other typically. So and I'm not I shouldn't say one way, but leans a certain way because let's take the binary out of it. But like, amen. So I knew that, yeah. So like, let me correct myself. So like, yeah. So I knew that like, that didn't feel right. So I took a queer theory class in college because I was a women's studies major, of course. And I took a queer theory class, and I remember the teacher getting up in front of this whole class and drawing a big line on the board. And she said, this is what sexuality looks like. It's a continuum. It's a spectrum. And you have gay on one side and you have straight on the other, and then everything in between. And I was like, wait a minute, like, and she was like, and that's queer. And that's why identifying as queer is so important to me, because that blew my mind, because I was like, oh, I'm everything in between. And also she was like, and it doesn't have to stay like where you are on the continuum today doesn't have to be the same as tomorrow. I was like, this feels good. That was the first, I think. So for me, I didn't come out later in life because gay didn't ever fit for me. I knew that like I had attraction to all genders, and the reason I don't use pan is because I don't feel attraction regardless of gender. It's not like, oh, I love the person and gender means like, and gender doesn't contribute at all. Gender does contribute to it. So that's why I like queer, because and anyway, it's complicated. This is all complicated. So for me, like anytime I'm like, when I hear youth be like, yes, I use this term, I was like, good for you. Cause like, I didn't know all that till I was like in college. So for me, yeah, just kind of hearing that, I was like, okay, this all, like it all clicked, but I still had to sort of make peace with like what it meant and how it functioned in my life. And that process, like I said, I think I was in that class at 21. I didn't come out publicly, even though I dated all genders. I didn't come out publicly till I was 29. So I say all this to just say, like, be kind to yourself through this process. Identities can change. Be open, because for me, like, yeah, that's the term that has always felt good. And along the way, I added bi when I realized that bi could be inclusive of non-binary identities as well and other genders. Then I was like, okay, I'll use that too. So yeah, just be kind of, my advice is just be open, and yeah, don't feel pressure to identify one way and stick to that for the rest of your life. Like, that stresses me out. I don't ever want anyone to feel like they have to stick to one identity, because that's not ever how I was. So
yeah. So 3 points. 3 points. First point being, you are amazing.
Thank you.
And I love you already. You're fantastic. And I really hope we come to Cleveland and we get to work.
Yes.
There. I'm like manifesting this, and we get to
manifest it. I'm ready.
And yeah, let's do it. Two, you said this earlier in our conversation about, coming out is dependent often on safety. So for a lot of the youth that are watching, they may not feel comfortable coming out yet, and for you to be that example is really powerful of finding it in your own time and finding a way and a place and a space to feel safe, seen, and celebrated is really something that we talk about at the Future Perfect Project. That's so important to us. And third point being, I feel like we need to start a company called the Queer Continuum. It needs to be all about gender identity and sexual identity, and we're going to talk FPP, Queer Continuum. I love it. Maybe it's an off-brand. Maybe it's like Mark by Mark Jacobs. You know what I mean? It's like Queer Continuum by Ready to Stare and the Future Perfect Project.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Queer Continuum.
Yeah, my teacher's name is Karina. She was this amazing Italian woman, just like me, and it was like, yeah, she just changed my life. Like, and I don't think I even really realized it at the time, but like, I distinctly remember sitting there and with a friend of mine who identified as gay, and he was like, I still identify as gay. Like, I'm all the way 100% on the other side. And I was just thinking to myself, I didn't even tell him, but I was thinking to myself, I'm somewhere in that middle, and that's okay. Like, you know what I mean? So I think you don't have to even, like, you would think of all people, I'd be comfortable telling one of my best friends who's sitting next to me saying, yep, I'm gay. But like, it takes time. It really takes time. And that's okay. Like, this is the biggest thing I would have known, is that, like, it's okay to take your time and to figure out what feels good for you. And also for me, because my self-love and my self-worth was so low and I just really felt so uncomfortable being visible, I also kind of, and I hate to say this, but like, I went for like almost like the lowest hanging fruit in terms of who I dated, because I wanted that easy validation. And for me, dating other genders was scary. It was obviously more high risk, because there could be something really real. And that's not to discount the relationships that I had, but at the same time, it felt, I always tell the story, like the first time I ever kissed a girl, I was like, oh, this feels different. This is that's what fireworks feels like. And I realized, yeah, that was scarier to put myself out there. It wasn't that instant, quick validation that I knew I could get from dating cis men. So I say all that to say, like, I think if I hadn't gone on my self-love journey of taking those selfies, putting myself in front of the camera, I don't know that I would have ever come out. I don't, because I had to learn to love myself, to be like, who cares what anybody else says? You're queer enough. You're like, you are. I literally had to forgive myself. The most important person I had to come out to was myself, period.
Oof. You're really fabulous. You're really fabulous. And your story is powerful and important, and it resonates with me. And I can only imagine how much it's resonating with the queer youth that are watching, and that are a part of our programs. I'm really excited to ask you, just as we're getting close to the end of our time together, what does the perfect future look like to you?
I think a perfect future to me looks like not having to come out, because we don't make assumptions about anyone's gender, anyone's sexual orientation. We give everyone the space to explore and figure out who they are. And then when they're ready, then it happens. It's just like, okay, you've decided, we've not put anything on you. So I think I think for me, just giving people the space and not making assumptions, that's like what I really hope for in the future. Um, I just want people to feel safe to be who they are and to explore, and I know that that's not the case, obviously. Like, I can, we're talking about the future, but yeah, the reality of it is that, like, yeah, we put people in boxes so easily. Bi men are just secretly gay, and bi women, they just
Right.
got, like, it's just like we do all of this, and we can't just let people be who they are. So my perfect future would look like acceptance, understanding, and just taking away the assumptions so people had time to, because I think, we're already seeing that the youth that you work with, you already have seen so many of them are more comfortable identifying as LGBTQ or as fluid, as something other than straight. They're comfortable with that. So that future is possible. And I'm excited for the future because I'm excited about the youth. They make me feel hopeful.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I also want to ask if there's something that you could say to your younger self about your experience as a queer person, what would that be?
That's such a good question. I think I would tell my younger self was so consumed by this idea that I would never find love, that I never spent a lot of time focusing on giving it to myself. I was so focused on no one's going to want to date me, no one's going to want to be with someone like me, that I never took the time to understand that the like me part was actually really great. So I would tell my younger self to, like, who cares about those crushes? Who cares about all those people? You are different, and that is going to be your superpower. One day you will be celebrated for being the different, wonderful, amazing person that you are. Like, your sensitivity, your empathy, all these things that made you feel soft and weak are actually such a superpower and such a strength that one day you will make your career out of being yourself. And that's beautiful. So that doesn't necessarily relate to being queer, but I'm telling you, I would have probably been out a lot sooner had I accepted myself first. So that had to happen first before I could even think about anything outside of what I just thought I had to do to be accepted.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the way that you described your identity as a queer person was so much from what I heard was authenticity, the importance of authenticity, and what you just said was so authentic to, like, acknowledge the young person that you were, that,
Mm-hmm.
like, the what was on your mind at the time, and to recognize, like, how important it would be to hear what you shared, and I know it's powerful for me to hear that kind of stuff,
Thank you.
that affirmation, that hey girl, you are helping me tonight, that is for sure.
Thanks.
You're offering me so much love, and the people that are watching so much love. I just want to take the last few minutes and say thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for your time and your willingness to have a conversation about your experience as an artist, as a blogger, as a designer, as a model of the amazingness that is you, so that we could celebrate you, and in turn celebrate each other and our community. If those of you who are watching are interested in the Future Perfect Project, we have a workshop on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, all about independence and what it's like to live in a world, in a country that is declaring its independence, but not necessarily the most free for all of us and for queer people. And if you're feeling like you have more questions or any thoughts of concern, you can contact the Trevor Project, which is available in our link tree. It's an amazing resource for queer youth who are questioning, and it's just saves so many lives, and an amazing organization, and we love working with them as much as we love working with you, Alysse. You are so wonderful. I'm so glad that we were able to, have a conversation, because that's what's so important in our community is, utilizing a resource like the Trevor Hotline, is so important when you need someone to talk to. And
Mm-hmm.
these are the kinds of conversations we need to be having so that, you know, we can bring love to the forefront, bring joy, and remove the shame, remove the fear and the doubt. Let them take seats at the table while joy and love just, you know, lead the discourse, which I feel like we were able to do tonight. And that queer continuum, I'm telling you, it's going to be a thing.
Yes. All right.
Make it
Here for we're taking that, but yeah, I appreciate the time. I think so often people like look at look at my journey and one don't know that I haven't been out all that long. Really, in the grand scheme of things, 4 years is not that long, and that that was easy or whatever. They look at pictures and they're like, oh, you must have always like, oh, it's so easy. You're looking at a snapshot of someone's life on Instagram, and if you ever want to have conversations with me, like, I'm totally like, well, we could talk whatever. That's why I love doing stuff like this, because you just never really know someone's full story. It's so hard to, like, people who've been following me since 2012 probably don't remember every step of this journey. So I'm always happy to clarify and to share and just offer support if I can. I'm definitely not the only resource. You are a great resource. The Trevor Project, like you said, so many great resources, but just know that, like, wherever you're at in your journey is valid, and these things take time. So be kind to yourself above all things. Be kind to yourself.
Thank you so much, Alysse. So much
You're
love.
welcome.
Thank you for putting it out there into the universe. And I'm glad that we now are connected and have a relationship. I'm looking
Me
forward
too.
to many more
It's
conversations.
the beginning. I'll see you in Cleveland.
Sounds good. Yes, the Buckeye
Yeah.
State. Here we go.
Yes.
So, enjoy the rest of your barbecue day.
Thank you. It's s'mores time. I'm really.
Family. Bye.
Bye.